Lucy's Kitchen. It's Lucy's Kitchen. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Lucy's Kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen. It's Lucy's Kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen. Oh yeah. Lucy's Kitchen. She's Lucy and she's got a kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen.
And now that we've got your attention, let's cook. Hello, welcome to Lucy's Kitchen. I'm Lucy and this is my kitchen. Today we are going to learn how to make a rustic tomato tart, just brimming with fresh ingredients. This tart is easy to make, beautiful to look at, and of course delicious. This time of year we have such beautiful produce, and of course when tomatoes are in season you just want to eat them up, and so there's so many of them and such a great variety of them. We're going to use all kinds of heirloom tomatoes here. I don't even know the names of them, but if you can't get multicolored tomatoes, it's okay. It will still be delicious, but it is one of those wonderful things that when tomatoes are in season, you want to mix it up and really get something beautiful. This tart also has onions. I've got this very large onion here, and in fact this is recently from the farmer's market, so it's a very fresh onion. And I have an assortment of cheeses and other ingredients. So we're going to get started by slicing the onion, and we're going to caramelize the onion, and that's going to make this tart especially delicious. Cut off that part. What I like to do is I like to take the onion, cut it in half, right through the root. Keep the root intact. It'll help us slice it. Peel off the kind of raggedy part. And that's pretty good. And then do the same with the other half. We're going to need a whole onion for this recipe. All right. Now, this knife is a little big for what I want to do. I want to have real control. So I'm just going to take my knife and cut down in wedges, in thin wedges. And then when we cut off the root, it's in the right shape. See? Okay. So I melted together about a tablespoon of butter and about a tablespoon of olive oil. And the reason I do that is the olive oil helps keep the butter from burning, and the butter gives the onions a really sweet taste. So here are the onions. Stir them around for a while until everything is coated and they're all separated. And we're going to do this for a few minutes, and then we're going to just let them be on the lowest heat and check them only every couple of minutes. I'm going to turn it down to the lowest temperature, and then we're just going to forget about them. While they're caramelizing, we're going to cut up our tomatoes. I'm going to take these tomatoes and slice them up. First core them. Don't really know how much I'm going to need, but one of the things about tomatoes is that they really tend to weep because they're very juicy, especially heirloom tomatoes. And in order to get them ready for this tart, we want to make sure that they're drained. So you can see how gorgeous that is. Beautiful slice. And then this one is completely different. This one's almost purple. Oh boy, I love that. So I'm going to put them on the paper towel, and as we do this, they'll start to drain. And then I'm going to cut up a few of these little sweet baby ones. These little baby ones are going to be very sweet to look at. They're going to give a decorative look to this tart. A little salt, a little pepper. And that helps the tomatoes release some of their juices. I'm going to just flip them over. And that way we can salt the other side. Now these have to drain for about 10 minutes. And to make them go a little faster, I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of paper towels on top of them and set them aside. Now we're going to tackle the pastry. I've got my trusty rolling pin, and I have some pastry here. Now, if you buy store-bought pastry, which is perfectly okay to use, you'll have to roll it out a little to get to the 12-inch circle that this tart needs. One of the reasons we have to do that is because we're going to, well, you'll see. I'm rolling it out, which makes it a little thinner and gives us a little more surface. Because this is a free-form tart, we don't have a pie dish to give it shape. So that's one reason we need a little bit of a larger pastry. All right, and that looks like about the right size. Now, the best way to deal with this is to put parchment on a baking sheet and let the pastry hang over the edge. And cover it with the other piece of parchment so it doesn't dry out. And then we'll set all that aside until we're ready. These onions are browning nicely. We are doing them over low heat so that they don't burn or get crisp. We want them to be very creamy. And the creamier they are, the sweeter they are. And it really doesn't matter what kind of onion you use. If you use a sweet onion, it will be even sweeter. But even a big yellow onion will turn out to be an incredibly delicious, sweet thing once you're done. This is also a trick we use when we make French onion soup. Only then we are caramelizing about 5 pounds of onions. I can tell you, you need goggles for that one. So we checked the onions. Everything's going fine over there. They're caramelizing beautifully. I'm going to chop up some basil and get our herbs ready. And then we're going to mix the filling ingredients together. So I've got some thyme. Whoops. It's very, okay, there it is, thyme, and some chives. If you don't have chives, it doesn't really matter because we've caramelized the onions, but if you have a green onion, you could substitute it for the chives. Wash it super, super well. And I'm going to save some of these really nice basil leaves for garnish. And then I'm going to, once I've chopped them, I'm also going to, well, I don't have to even tell you because you're going to see me do it. Basil's fairly easy to chop. There's lots of different methods. You can take it and roll it up and make a chiffonade out of them. That's also a lovely thing to do, so I'll do that with some of it. That's to take it and cut it into tiny, tiny, tiny strips. And I think in this case, that might be good. for a garnish before we bake it. The rest of this I'm going to just chop in the regular way. That's good. Now we've got these chives. Chives are great. You can cut them with the scissors. You can chop them. I should have probably mixed them with the basil and just chopped them. They're going in together. They give a little sort of pungent and fresh tasting onion flavor to whatever you're cooking. They're great also raw in a salad. Now we're going to mix the ingredients for our filling. We're going to start with a half a cup of mayonnaise. And people ask me sometimes if mayonnaise is safe to bake with, and it is, especially when you consider that even if you make it yourself, the eggs are going to cook when you bake it. So it's totally fine. Into the mayonnaise, I'm going to put that chopped basil and the chives. And I'm going to take one of my thyme sprigs and I'm going to just strip the leaves from it, which is sometimes not that easy to do. And we're going to put in some shredded cheese. Now this cheese is a mixture of different Italian cheeses, and we're going to save just a little bit of it, but most of it's going to go right in here. And I'm saving about this much, couple of tablespoons. I'm going to save that for when we make our tart. And I'm going to put in a little bit of ground pepper. And I'm just going to do a couple of shakes of salt. So not much. This is going to make a very nice and a nice bed for those tomatoes. All right. Now it's time to construct our tart. Bring the baking pan over. We'll take, you can see the cheese, and just dump it right in the middle. By the way, this filling that I just described would make an excellent dip for vegetables. Now I'm going to spread this around to within a couple of inches of the edge. Okay. I'm going to bring our tomatoes over. What I like to do is take the ugly ones and put them around the edge. We won't be seeing those. So there's a red one, there's a yellow one. You can alternate them. Of course, these aren't really ugly, so that's kind of ugly. Put that actually in like that. And this one. All right, and I think that's pretty good. Now we can start layering them around. And I'm going to hold off on the little ones for a minute. Set that aside. What I want to do now is fold this over, kind of like that. And as I fold it, make little, like folds so that it tucks in, because that's going to be the crust. It's going to be the decorative part of the crust, and it also helps to hold it in. And it gives you a very crispy crust. cover that up. And there we go. Okay. So now I'm going to take these little pieces that I didn't use before. I'm just going to tuck them down here. Try to get them skin side down. They'll be a lot prettier. This one's skin side up. I'll do a little bit of that. A little of that. You may remember earlier I talked about cutting basil into a chiffonade. Well, the chiffonade is it's like a strip. So this basil is in little strips. It's very decorative. Save some of that. Don't use it all. Then take the thyme sprigs and just set them on top. All right, we're ready to get this, give it its final touches before it goes in the oven. First thing we do is we beat an egg with about a teaspoon of water and get it nice and smooth, and then brush that right on top. And really cover this tart with the egg. We're going to go around a couple of times. And if you want to, you can even put it between the layers, help keep them together. And then right around the edges. And then I'm going to just dabble some right on top of the tart. First of all, make sure that the edge is covered with egg as well, the little crust edge. And I think that's about it. Now I'm going to take, this is some goat cheese. And what I want to do is I just want to break it into some crumbles. And I really don't want that much, but I want enough that I'm going to sprinkle it over the entire tart. I'm going to start with the middle. And by the way, you don't have to buy it like this. You can buy it already crumbled. And I don't have to tell you that my hands are clean. Always wash your hands. When I cook, I wash my hands like 30 times, maybe even more. A little bit more, I think, right there. Okay, now I'm going to take a little bit of this pepper and just grind it right on there. And since I have extra egg, I think I'll just dabble some right there. Just drizzle it over the top. Kind of secure the cheese, although the cheese is going to melt and brown, so it's not really necessary. Now we're ready to put it in the oven. I've been preheating my oven to 375, and we're going to go ahead and take this tart right over there. And I think now it's done. So, here it is. The most beautiful tart and the most delicious. Now you're going to probably want to take this off the, well, you know what? I think I'll just cool it in the pan for a few minutes. It needs to stiffen up a little, so it has to cool. If you were to cut it now, it would just run all over. So just let it do that, and then we'll cut a piece and see what it tastes like. Well, while we're waiting for our tart to cool enough to slice it, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. If you were paying attention, you probably noticed that I completely forgot to use the caramelized onions. So this teaches us a couple of things. One, you can be very flexible with your recipes. Two, there's ways to pretend, for example, that you did it on purpose. And that's what I'm going to do. I did it on purpose because it's nice to have it as a contrast to the dish. So I'm going to go ahead and slice up my tart and get a nice piece from it. Oops, let's see. Oh my, okay, it's still pretty juicy. Let's slide my spatula under there. Okay, all right, there's a very, very lovely piece of tart. Now, how are we going to fix this up? Well, my first job will be to take some of these caramelized onions and artfully arrange them next to the tart. Okay. Then I'm going to put in a couple of cherry tomatoes just to make it pretty with our reserved basil. Tuck that in right there. And then I still have some of the basil that was a chiffonade, and I can just sprinkle that all over the plate and make that look lovely. And there we have it. Beautiful dish, which, oops, that is bound to happen, which anyone would love to eat, and I'm going to enjoy it tonight. Here's the tart, arranged artfully with some garnishes. You could also put a little sour cream on it and drizzle it. You could thin it out with a little milk and make it kind of a pretty design. Although, honestly, it really doesn't need a thing. And it's going to be just as delicious as it is beautiful. No one has to know that the onions were supposed to be inside the tart, not next to it. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and be sure to tune in next time for more recipes from my kitchen to yours.